welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. The wheels of my suitcase rattled against the cold tile as I pushed the front door open. The house was dark, save for a faint light spilling from the crack under the bedroom door upstairs. "Honey, I'm home," I called out, my voice echoing off the walls, more out of habit than expectation. My work trip to Chicago had dragged on 2 extra days due to unforeseen meetings, and fatigue was etched deep into my bones. As I toed off my shoes, my hand froze on the rack. There, out of place and unfamiliar, was a sleek, dark coat, definitely not mine, and too large to be hers. A pair of men's shoes sat neatly beside mine, polished and sharp. My heart began to pound, a primal drumbeat in the silence of our hallway. Steeling myself, I quietly ascended the stairs, each step heavier than the last. The muffled sounds of laughter trickled down, chilling my spine. I paused at our bedroom door, my hand trembling on the knob. With a breath I didn't know I was holding, I pushed it open. The scene before me was like a physical blow. There, in the sanctuary of our shared life, was my wife, Lena. Her back to me, her motions unmistakable, her laughter now a sharp sting. Beneath her, a face turned towards me in shock, his features twisted in surprise and fear. For a moment, time stopped. Then the world resumed at double speed. Lena's eyes met mine, wide with guilt. "Mark. It's not what it looks like," she stammered, scrambling from the bed, her words tumbling into the thick, charged air. "Not what it looks like." My voice was a growl, unrecognizable to my own ears. "It looks like you're cheating on me in our own bed, Lena." The man grabbed his clothes, mumbling apologies as he hurried past me, a ghost fleeing the scene of his crime. Lena reached out to me, tears streaming down her face. "Please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," I snapped, cutting her off. My mind raced, betrayal igniting a dark fire within me. As she pleaded, her excuses filling the room like suffocating smoke, a cold resolve settled over my heart. I turned away from her, the image of them together seared into my memory. "This is far from over, Lena," I said quietly, my voice calm, deadly. "You'll regret this." As I left the room, her sobs echoed in the hallway. I knew what I had to do. This betrayal would not go unanswered. I would ruin her, just as she had ruined us. The plans began to form, each more vindictive than the last. Divorce was only the beginning. Lena had no idea of the storm that was coming her way. And as for that man, he would learn soon enough that hell hath no fury like a husband scorned. The morning light did nothing to soften the harsh reality of betrayal that hung over the house. I sat at the kitchen table, my coffee untouched, as I plotted my next steps. Lena had spent the night in the guest room, the occasional sound of her muffled cries reaching my ears, but I remained unmoved. My heart had turned to stone. I pulled out my laptop and began to research. My fingers flew over the keys, diving into legal advice, financial implications of divorce, and methods to secure my assets. I made notes, organized files, and scheduled appointments with the best lawyers in town. If Lena wanted war, I'd bring it to her doorstep. The door creaked open and Lena stepped in, her eyes red, her voice shaky. "Mark, can we talk?" she asked, her hands nervously twisting the hem of her shirt. I glanced up, my expression icy. "Talk? Like you talked with him?" I replied, my words cutting through the tense air between us. "I made a mistake, I'm so sorry." "It was nothing, just a stupid error in judgment," she pleaded, taking a tentative step closer. "Save your apologies for someone who cares," I snapped, my tone final. I returned my focus to the screen, dismissing her presence. She flinched as if struck. "What are you going to do?" Lena's voice was a whisper, laden with fear. Firstly, divorce, I said matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather. Then, I'll make sure you leave with nothing. Lena gasped, tears welling up again. You wouldn't. Watch me, I interrupted. I stood up, towering over her, the resolve in my eyes unyielding. You destroyed everything. Now it's your turn to lose. She retreated, stumbling back. Please, Mark, think about this. We can go to counseling, try to. No. My refusal was blunt, devoid of any warmth we once shared. It's too late for that. You made your choice. After Lena left the room, I continued my work, contacting everyone from financial advisors to private investigators. I needed ammunition, and I was going to get it. Anything that could be used to my advantage was fair game: credit card statements, phone records, receipts. If Lena thought her infidelity was the only skeleton in her closet, she was sorely mistaken. By afternoon, I had gathered enough evidence of her betrayal and poor financial decisions to strengthen my case. Each piece of information was a nail in the coffin of our marriage, a marriage she had already buried. As the sun set, I poured myself a drink, feeling the weight of the day. The road ahead would be brutal, but necessary. Lena had awakened a side of me she'd never known, and there was no turning back. The game had changed, and I was playing for keeps. The early morning sun barely pierced the heavy curtains of our once shared bedroom, now mine alone. I had moved back in the previous night, determined to reclaim every inch of my space as Lena's presence diminished around the house. Today was the day I would confront her, not just about her infidelity, but about every lie I had uncovered. I heard her footsteps in the hallway, hesitant yet hopeful, a stark contrast to the resolve that hardened my heart. As she entered the room, her gaze lingered on the bed, perhaps reminiscing about better days, but I had no time for such nostalgia. Mark, we need to talk about. I cut her off with a sharp gesture, my hand slicing through the air. Sit down, Lena. We are going to talk, but this time, I set the terms. She sat, visibly shaking, clutching her hands in her lap. I laid out the documents I had gathered, bank statements, credit card bills, and more, all splashed across the table like a dealer's spread in a high-stakes game. These, I began, my voice steady and cold, tell a story much older and uglier than your little affair. Lena's eyes widened as she scanned the papers. What is this, Mark? Proof, I said, tapping one particularly incriminating credit card statement. Of years of financial infidelity. Shopping sprees, hidden accounts, debts I knew nothing about. It seems betrayal is second nature to you. She tried to interrupt, but I plowed forward. And it's not just about money, is it? This? I held up a photo, a screenshot of her text messages with the man from our bed. How long, Lena? It was just a few times. It didn't mean anything. Her voice cracked, the plea sounding feeble even to her own ears. A few times too many, I retorted, my tone dismissive. And now, your choices have consequences. Lena's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. Please, I'm begging you, let's find a way to work this out. For us, for our family. Our family. I scoffed. You should have thought about that before you brought a stranger into our bed. We're past negotiating, Lena. I explained my demands, the house, the savings, everything in my favor. Her protests were drowned out by the detailed recounting of every misstep she had taken, documented, and now turned against her. If you think this will go uncontested, you're more deluded than I thought, Lena finally snapped, anger rising through her despair. I welcome the challenge, I replied coolly. My lawyers are ready, and every dirty secret will be laid bare in court. Or, you can agree to my terms and save us both the spectacle. She looked defeated, broken by the weight of her secrets now out in the open. You won't see me again after this, she whispered, a mix of a threat and a promise. "That's the idea," I confirmed, my reply void of emotion. As she stood and left the room, her steps were slow, like she was walking through a nightmare she could never have anticipated. Alone, I felt a hollow victory. I had taken control, set the stage for my revenge, but at what cost? As the silence settled around me, I realized that this house, once full of life, was now just a cold, echoing shell. But this was the path I had chosen, driven by betrayal and a thirst for retribution. The game was far from over, and I was ready to play it to the end. The final meeting was set in the stark, impersonal conference room of my attorney's office. Papers were neatly stacked, ready to sever the ties between Lena and me with the cold precision of legalese. I sat, a statue of resolve, while Lena entered, her face a mask hiding her turmoil. "I see you've decided to accept the terms," I noted as she sat across from me, avoiding my gaze. "Yes," she replied softly, her voice almost lost in the expanse between us. "There's no point in fighting." "You've made sure of that?" The documents were passed to her, one after another, and with each signature, I felt a vindictive satisfaction. But as we neared the end of the stack, I paused, holding back the final page, the page that would reveal the depth of my retaliation. "Lena," I began, my voice calm but laced with a venomous edge. "Before you sign this last one, there's something you should know." She looked up, confusion and fear mingling in her eyes. "The man you cheated with," I continued, holding her gaze, "was no accident. I hired him." Lena's eyes widened in disbelief. What are you talking about?" "A test, Lena. One you failed spectacularly." I let the words sink in, watching as the color drained from her face. "I suspected your betrayals, not just of our finances but of our marriage. I needed proof, so I set the stage." You orchestrated this." Her voice broke, the realization dawning on her like a slow, painful sunrise. "Yes. And you played your part perfectly," I said with a cold, calculated smile. "Every step you took, every lie you told, I was one step ahead." The room was thick with tension, the air nearly solid between us. Lena's hands trembled as she absorbed the magnitude of my betrayal. "How could you?" she whispered, her eyes glistening with tears of rage and pain. "How could I not?" I retorted sharply. "After everything I found, everything you hid. You deserved nothing less." The lawyer, silent until now, interjected, "If we could finalize the proceedings." I nodded, sliding the last document to her. Lena signed it, the scribble of her name a white flag in our war of deceits. As she stood to leave, Lena paused. "You won this game, Mark. But at what cost?" "The cost was yours to count, not mine," I replied, the hollow victory echoing in my own ears. Lena walked out, and I knew I would never see her again. The door closed with a click, a soft finale to our tumultuous symphony. I sat back, the weight of my actions settling around me. The silence was deafening, victory, yes, but at the expense of everything we once cherished. The room felt colder, the world outside indifferent. In my ruthless pursuit of revenge, I had lost not just a wife but a part of myself I would never reclaim. The deceit was mine as much as hers, a mirrored betrayal that ended not just a marriage but the very essence of what had once made us human. As I left the building, the air felt different, freer yet heavier. I had walked the path of retribution to its bitter end, and now I stood alone, a victor in a battle where both sides had lost everything.